All right, we're ready to go.
We're rolling.
We're ready. All right. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Kristin Snowden. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California, and I try to provide free online webinars and other resources related to helping clients navigate relationship crises. And these are often crises that have been triggered by uncovering an addiction, finding out about infidelity. There's usually emotional abuse present in the relationship dynamics. And I also work in multiple other forms of betrayal trauma. And I've noticed in my years of providing content on YouTube and other formats that there are these buzzwords that overlap and come into people's comments about the videos, discussion, questions. And these buzzwords are things like narcissistic abuse, covert narcissist. There's these statements like, they're all narcissists, they're never going to change, just pack up and run, there's no use. And all of this information that's out there, if you're a betrayed partner that just uncovered your partner doing these nefarious behaviors you didn't know, you're trying to educate yourself and figure out how to move forward. These comments and terms and diagnoses can feel so scary and confusing because you're just trying to figure out, okay, I have uncovered that my partner's been doing these horrible, heinous acts. Can this person who appears to have led a whole double life behind my back tends to minimize the harm that they've caused. They might be taking little accountability. There's been a long history of lying, manipulating, gaslighting while maintaining this double life. Can they ever become normal? Is there any kind of treatment or hope for my partner and for me to have a healthy, vulnerable, authentic, relationship? What are these terms that I'm reading? An addict, can an addict ever change? Narcissistic abuse, can a narcissist ever change? So this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about all these buzzwords of narcissistic abuse. Is my partner an addict? Is he or she not an addict? And then also I'm going to talk about the parallels and overlaps that we often see in treatment, what causes narcissism and addiction to show up in someone's life, and most importantly, can these types of people ever change? Can they heal? Can they become someone to trust, love, engage in an intimate relationship with? So the goals of today's webinar is to first discuss the signs, symptoms, diagnosis criteria for narcissism and addiction, talk about how one tends to become the forming of an addict or a narcissist, the ideal recovery path or treatment options for someone once they've been determined to be an addict or a narcissist, and then importantly, signs that your partner might be changing, improving from his or her default setting as an addict or narcissist, or thinking through that decision-making filter into someone who can instead engage in an honest, authentic, vulnerable, transparent relationship. Conversely, I will also share signs that he or she might still be acting out of his or her narcissistic tendencies, kind of warning signs to look out for. Now, let me caveat this. I'm going to be speaking from my experience. What is my experience as a clinician? Well, I've been working about 15 years in the field of addiction recovery under Rob Weiss. I ran his men's drug and sex addiction program. I've also worked in other addiction and mental health recovery treatment programs while also running my own private practice, running groups for betrayed partners, and helping and supporting people who are recovering from addiction, couples work, etc. So that is my background. I've seen thousands and thousands of clients, and I'm going to be working off of my experience. With that said, I cannot diagnose your partner. I get lots of email. Is my partner an addict? Is he or she a narcissist? Can he change? I don't know your person. They're not in front of me. They're not in my office. I haven't taken a full workup or history from them. But what I can do is I can help you with these definitions, these signs, these symptoms, help you get really educated in the path forward, because obviously a lot of addicts and narcissists kind of push back on change. They don't want to change. They're scared of it. They're very fragile egos, and we'll talk more about that. So I want you to become very educated in saying, no, this is the path out of this. If we're going to move on to a healthier way of engagement, these are the ways to get through this. This is what the experts are saying. And you'll find there's a lot of overlap, especially with all these experts that come speak on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. And I want you to really be able to pick out and understand the signs of someone in recovery, what that can look like. Because the more educated you are, the more I think you can feel grounded in how to move forward in your own recovery and making these really hard decisions about, should I stay? Should I go? Is my partner fully committed? Or are they just avoiding consequences, etc.? So let's get going. Let's dive in. Let's start by defining, according to like the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, what is narcissism and what is addiction. So narcissism versus addiction is considered what we call like a personality disorder. This is this idea that it's ingrained in who I am, whereas addiction is just kind of more defining and outlining how someone engages in certain behaviors, the things that they do as a reaction to their environment. Whereas narcissism is like, I walk around with this all the time. I ooze out this type of behavior and these choices and all this kind of stuff. So it's a personality disorder, which is a mental condition characterized by an inflated sense of self-importance, a need for excessive attention and admiration, struggling with, and this is someone who struggles with engaging in meaningful, successful relationships. And there are signs of this person lacking empathy for others, not understanding their consequences, how their behavior impacts another person. Narcissists also have a tendency to exploit others and appear to not really have remorse around it. They also tend to respond poorly to criticism, often turning to anger and aggression. Narcissists also have a pattern of grandiose beliefs, arrogance, and a low tolerance for uncomfortable feelings, uncertainty, disruption, and power, etc. Now, a huge requirement for all these diagnoses all the time is that they have to include problems. It has to be creating a problem in their life that they have these traits. That usually looks like problems at work. Maybe they don't get along with their coworkers, or they've been fired for their behavior. No one wants to work on projects with them. Problems in their relationship, multiple divorces, multiple marriages, people reporting that they, the narcissist is keeping them at arm's length and they can't get truly connected to them. Financial issues, often when you're operating with a grandiose framework, you live in a grandiose framework and there's financial consequences, or maybe you got in legal issues related to your narcissistic trait. Now, it's important to note that the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, requires the criteria for diagnosing narcissism is that you have to make sure that these personality traits do not solely exist because of some other diagnostic issues, such as substance abuse or addiction disorders, or other mental health disorders, such as maybe bipolar-induced mania and the grandiosity that comes when you're in a bipolar mood swing. So these are things that need to be ruled out by a licensed, professional in that area. Another little note I want you to think about is that the data shows that true narcissism, so a true full-blown narcissist, is believed to only exist in 1 to 5% of the population. So it's very, very tiny, those who actually present as a full personality disorder narcissist. However, we can all show traits of being a narcissist. Like there's traits, we have styles, and we use narcissistic tendencies for like defense mechanisms. So the example I always give is, Brene Brown says that when you are given the opportunity to be all of you, the vulnerable, real you, the good, bad, light, dark, we tend to have three different responses. One is we puff up our chest and pretend to be bigger and better than how we really feel inside. Or we shrink down and pretend to be smaller and less than and don't show up. Or we stand our sacred ground and say, yeah, I'm good, I'm bad, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses. Well, a narcissistic trait would be someone who would do the first version. I will always show up to a room, and if I'm feeling insecure, scared, uncertain of how everyone views me, how I'm being perceived, I will always show up with a puffed up chest and a sense of grandiosity of, oh, no, 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 you're we're not equal to, I'm not less than, I am better than you. So I know more than you. I'm the boss of you. I will outtalk you. I will swing lies and BS, whatever I need to do to make myself feel like the optics are I'm more powerful in this situation. So those are narcissistic tendencies. Now let's switch over to the DSM diagnostic criteria for addiction. And let me first educate you with the fact that there are two types of addictions. There's chemical addiction. So I don't like the state that I'm in right now. So I ingest a chemical, I drink the alcohol, I do the cocaine, I smoke the pot, and I take the prescription drug pills in order to change my biological state. That's a chemical addiction. Then there's these things called process addictions where I do a behavior to change my state, to kind of get high from the behavior. That's where this sex, love, porn addiction stuff comes from. Gambling, workaholism, shopping. I get high from the cycle of, figuring out how I want to act out, looking up the massage parlors, looking up the person I want to act out with, flirting with the person inappropriately at work, viewing or watching or looking up the perfect porn that I want to see, searching for the shopping item, fantasizing about all these things. What it is doing is physically releasing chemicals in my body that are getting me high, that are changing my state of being. And what I'm not doing when I'm in these state changes, when I'm in these behaviors, is I'm not sitting with my hurt, my pain, my fear, my imposter syndrome, the stories that I'm not good enough. If people really knew me, they wouldn't like me, right? I'm changing the chemicals in my body by acting out or by ingesting chemicals. So let's talk about this. You have to meet a couple of these to meet the criteria for addiction. Do you engage in these behaviors or ingest these chemicals to a level of danger? Are you breaking laws? Are you getting DUIs? Actual act of buying street drugs and consuming that's very, very dangerous. Consuming too much alcohol, that can kill you too. But there's also, we do these dangerous behaviors in sexual addiction or pornography. There's law breaking that has to occur. There's going to shady places and engaging with shady people in order to act out in these certain behaviors and ways. Another requirement is that it has to cause social problems, relational problems, problems at work, problems in your partnership, the most basic thing is so many people are obsessing about when they're going to act out again, when they're going to get high again, that they are not present with their people, at their job. They're not paying attention to things. They're not engaging with other people. They are escaping in just fantasy without even acting out. That often is the most common problem that exists. But a lot of people lose their jobs. A lot of them get fired because of the affair and things that happen. So those are things that cause those social, relational work problems. Another criteria is that there is a requirement that when you are not using, there's a withdrawal or even cravings. And people will say, well, how am I withdrawing from like pornography use? And there will be, when people swear off, okay, I'm not going to cheat on my wife anymore, or I'm not going to act out with that pornography anymore, The withdrawal can look like a heightened agitation. You can be shorter tempered. You can be kind of have more like shame-based acting out. You can be quicker to anger, higher anxiety, etc. Those are signs of withdrawal and cravings. Increased tolerance, that's another requirement. I need more of the same to get as high. The way that looks is I need more of the alcohol, more of the substances, or in behavioral process addictions, I need to up the ante. What was once intense and would distract and pull me out of myself, now it needs to be a little bit more dangerous, a little bit shadier. Maybe I need multiple affairs to go on. Maybe I need to be less good about covering up my tracks, so my partner starts getting on to me and we start getting more toxic in our like cat and mouse chasing that's going on. The pornography I view starts getting a little bit darker. These are all signs of an increased tolerance, and that you need to use more. And also, another criteria is to use more for longer periods of time, which I kind of explained that. Another requirement is that there'll be repeated attempts where I will try to stop using the substances or engage in this behavior. I'll make promises to myself, promises to other people. I swear I won't do. Okay, I'll switch from hard liquor to just drinking beer. Okay, I won't view pornography anymore. I won't cheat, but I'll do X, Y, and Z instead. Okay, I'll go a month without it. And then there has to be physical, psychological problems that show up because of the acting out. Lastly, there is a tendency to give up other activities in order to engage in addiction. So like I said, you become all consumed by it. If you're not acting out in the actual addiction, you are no longer present with anybody or anything because you're obsessing in the fantasy. You are struggling in the in-between withdrawal craving state, because it's just everything causes you to just not be present, not be with people, not engage in hobbies, not engage in things that kind of fill your soul or bring you joy because you're engaging in these behaviors. So that's narcissism and addiction. Not much overlap in the diagnoses and criteria. However, you're going to hear a lot of overlap in where it comes from and how it shows up in people's lives and in their relationships with others. So let me try to explain my perception and how I feel narcissism and addiction tend to show up. I feel like both of them, narcissism and addiction, are defensive reactions to attachment trauma. To basically, in the most common form, is we are born, we're meant to connect with other humans, we're wired to kind of get love, seek love, pursue connection. And at some point, both addicts and narcissists were kind of taught, yeah, I mean, don't do that. People are too scary. The world is too chaotic. Having feelings and having needs is just not going to do the trick, whatever, because they were abused, because they were neglected, because their family systems also included narcissism and addiction. Who knows? There's multiple reasons. But at one point, when they were faced with the vulnerability of life, that any given day I can put myself out there, I don't know what's going to happen, will this be enough? There's so much shame and discomfort that came in that process that instead of learning to build a tolerance around the discomfort of like, the world is scary, the world is chaotic, people are unpredictable, I'm not really sure what I need and want, but I need to start figuring that out, how to cope, how to get through tough things. Instead of building a tolerance for those experiences in life, they just kind of learn to shut it down, to lock it up. Narcissists, their response to it was, I know, instead of feeling powerless in a world where, I might not be enough for somebody else, the world, someone can love me and then stop loving me, or I can try something and I can fail. That's all yucky. I don't like that. So I'm just gonna always be powerful. I'm gonna know the most. I'm gonna be the most. I'm gonna not admire anybody. I'm not gonna respect anybody. I'm not gonna ask anything of anybody. I'm just gonna always be the one who knows the most, who is the most, who requires the most. Whereas addicts will kind of say, okay, so I'm supposed to connect with other people. This is really scary. I'm not really sure how to do it. And I really haven't learned the skills of like how to self-regulate. And I don't know how to go to another person to regulate and experience love, connection, safety, all that kind of stuff that is in the whole secure attachment world. But guess what? I know exactly what I'm going to get from this bottle of pills. I know exactly this like fantasy lost place I can go to when I lose myself in the world of pornography. Or I can definitely feel powerful when I'm doing like workaholism or perfectionism or all these kind of resources that neither of these types of people, narcissism or addicts, can handle the discomfort of the vulnerability of themselves and this world. That we can do everything we can in our power, but we're always taking risks. And there's always some level of uncertainty of how life is going to go. Instead of childhoods and life where they built a tolerance for that and developed skills to kind of say, okay, well, I'm going to do deep breathing to manage the discomfort of this. I'm going to go take a walk out in nature. I'm going to go talk to some friends. I'm going to develop these hobbies. I'm going to do these life-giving, like soul engaging things with other humans on this earth. Instead of learning those skills through childhood development, the narcissists go, I'm just going to lean into power over. I'm going to just always be powerful, always be grandiose, never lean on another person, never engage emotionally with them. Addicts will say they make their best friend that substance or that acting out behavior. And that is their answer. The intensity seeking, the chemical change, all of that above. So both of the addict and narcissist, they're dealing with very fragile egos. They, everyone will say we're wired as children to kind of learn through trials and tribulations. We're wired to kind of have the pain be recorded in our body to say, okay, I need to do this, not do this. I need to show up in this way, not do this. This is how I need to keep myself safe. These are the rules of engagement. Oh, wow, look, when I lie or cheat on somebody, it really hurts that person's feelings. I really don't like that feeling inside when I have done things that have hurt another person. I'm going to now use that pain feedback loop system to now make different choices. Narcissists and addicts, when they are in their active acting out periods, don't like that feedback loop system. They have all the defenses in the world to push away that painful feedback loop system. But really, pain is information for us. It's information telling us that the way we're doing it is not working and we need to change. So that's what those two groups are really, really lacking. Okay, so here's some more overlap. Both have fragile egos and really, really weak core senses of self. This is often caused by trauma, attachment wounds, etc. They both are excellent at turning off the emotions when it just doesn't serve them. So they appear to be sociopaths. That's the other buzzword I hear. Like they don't care. Like they're nothing's getting stirred up in this body while I'm in the fetal position in the corner in response to what's going on here. Narcissists use power to get away from the vulnerability and discomfort of life. Addicts use everything they can pull from the external world: substances, sex, porn, gambling, shopping, working, to seek intensity and distract from what's going on inside here. They avoid feeling, and they absolutely, at all costs, avoid acknowledging how their choices might impact other people. because that's yucky and we don't do yucky feelings. So what does it look like? How is it similar? How do their behaviors end up overlapping when you're trying to live and love with someone who's an addict or displaying narcissistic traits? Number one, there's no real intimacy. Intimacy, remember, is into me, you see. It's this idea that I get to kind of safely show you all of me, my good, my bad, my light, my dark. Sometimes I have good days, sometimes I'm falling apart. These are my strengths, these are my weaknesses. And we kind of get to walk down this path where you show me your good, bad, light, dark, I show your mine. We tolerate some things, we negotiate on some things, we love each other, not just like despite it, but maybe even because of it. And the vulnerability of it all is what, brings us together. Well, there is no real intimacy when you're dealing with someone in full-blown addiction or narcissism. Because again, they can't handle showing you the real them. Usually they don't even know what it is because they've done zero work to figure out who they are, what they need in life, what their feelings are, what their emotions are, how to communicate them, and then how to tolerate you sharing information with me and you being imperfect. Like that's all gross. I don't like it. It's not happening. Another big parallel or overlap is the fact that they don't accept influence. They know best. Again, because it's so fragile and vulnerable to own that you might not have the answers, that your best thinking might not be the right way of thinking, and their fragile egos can't handle the vulnerability of that idea. So I know everything. I'm not accepting influence. I know the best way. I know all the answers. Leave me alone. I mentioned this again, but common overlap is very low or little to no tolerance for any uncomfortable emotions, feelings, sharing of anything. So then therefore, everything will instead go through the lens of this is what I think, this is what I want, my thoughts, my opinions, my perspectives. It's all very like, as I say, it's up here. It's not down here below the chin. It's all thought. So that's where a lot of the minimization and the rationalization comes in. Oh, what she doesn't know isn't going to hurt her. Oh, it wasn't that bad. I give my partner a great life anyway. Who cares what I'm doing? Or look at all that I've offered you. Or hey, like stop your crying. You're kind of being crazy, and gross. I don't like that. So the addicts and narcissists appear to kind of just move through their head rather than below their chin, through their heart, their body, the feelings of like, this is hurting me, this is sad. And then empathy for others, right? Oh, I'm sorry that you're sad. This is hard, sorry for your loss. And there's this tendency for addicts and narcissists to find your discomfort, your hurt, your stress to be not just unacceptable, but contemptible. It'll bring out anger in them. Another overlap is that there's very high levels of distorted thinking. So you'll find when you're talking to active addicts and narcissists, and they'll kind of state their framework for life, for people, for good, for bad, you'll find your face moves in gestures of like, really? That's how you view humanity? Like, really? And that'll happen a lot. And you'll just be like, wow, that is such a disturbing or upsetting or sad way to view yourself, the world. That's an overlap. There's a strong emphasis for most addicts and narcissists on just trying to control his or her environment, right? They're just trying to maintain their little facade, superficial world where, they're the most powerful person in the world, or, don't let people in fully to see what they're doing. So there's this strong kind of squirrely tendency to control their environment, be very uncomfortable with uncertainty, want power over everything. Another overlap is the isolation. Narcissists tend to isolate because they are wired to not want to accept any kind of influence, respect other people, admire other people, because they have to have power over them. They have to be the smartest. So it's a naturally isolating experience in life, because if I have to be more powerful and better than everybody, then I definitely can't let anybody in and accept their influence or think that they might be good at this in life or that in life. So it keeps their world very small. And addicts tend to isolate, to hide their secrets, because doing relationships is messy and scary. It's something I don't want to do. I'm too busy engaging in my addict behaviors, so I don't have time for social life and friends. There's a focus on being right. There's often a tendency to play the victim, so blaming everyone else, a tendency to not take ownership for their behaviors and choices. And relationally, there can be a tendency to engage in love bombing, where both addicts and narcissists will maybe 1 minute idealize you, tell you how great you are, and then be very quick to dismiss you, withdraw from connecting with you. There's also sometimes they will test your loyalty. Will you stay? Do you love me enough? Kind of push and pull, make threats, ultimatums. Um, And another part of that relationally is that they might idealize you, but then struggle when you actually show up as a real flawed human being. And it's not what they need you to be, or how they want you to complete their fantasy or idealism, or just meet what they want in that particular moment. So for the betrayed partners or people who live with and love an addict, these are some of the common consequences of being in relationship with these types of people. Both betrayed partners of addicts and narcissists report feeling like they're crazy. They've been made to feel like they're crazy in the relationship. They get so confused. They've lost connection with their instincts and intuition. They feel a constant sense of emotional exhaustion, big time confusion about, am I bad? Am I wrong? Are my needs too much? Am I too emotional? Why do I feel love, but then feel like fear and anger towards them all at the same time? Um, there's also a tendency to report that they never know what they're going to get from their narcissist or addict on a daily basis. One day they're on top of the world, maybe idealizing you, everything's fine, they're a great family person. And then the next day they're withdrawn, angry. Usually it's because of their hidden acting out outside behaviors. You're not privy to that double life living world. So that's what's regulating their emotions. So you, as an observer to their world, and not knowing this whole double life that's going on behind um, your back, that's what's up and down regulating them, causing them to be in withdrawals and cravings and aggression, and acting out of like their shame and trauma and all that. You just know that they come home and they are not in a good mood. They're extra feisty, maybe blaming you for a bunch of things, and you're confused. And it causes another overlap, is that both people who love addicts and narcissists is they tend to do what we call the fawning response. I have a whole other video on that, but it's this idea that you just kind of try to calm down the situation. They're sitting at the dinner table and they're arguing with the kids, and you just try to down regulate their anger. You try to appease them and calm them, as like a survival response. Mom or dad are just they're in a mood like, let's go clean the house, or let's make things better, because we're all servicing the up and down dysregulated state of the addict or the narcissist in the home. Lastly, a common symptom is that you find yourself maybe finally bolstering up the courage to have hard conversations with your partner. Hey, when you didn't come home, or where have you been, or you're so emotionally disconnected, or our intimate connection feels very wrong or off. When you try to have hard conversations with your partner, you tend to leave apologizing to them. Oh, sorry, I upset you. Sorry that I didn't say this the right way. So that's one big common overlap. Okay, let's dive into the recovery and treatment path. This is my opinion. Addicts and narcissist because they are both founded in attachment trauma wounds and intimacy disorder issues, disordered way of connecting with other humans. Group work is required. It is 100% necessary because it is the antidote to everything that is wrong with what's going on in their life. Group work makes them go face to face, which, by the way, group work with usually with people who suffer and struggle in a similar way. They are a fellow addict. They are a fellow narcissist in recovery. So they're further down the path and they can appropriately confront someone who suffered and struggled in a similar way. Of course, group work is the hardest thing to get addicts and narcissists into because one of the symptoms are they're a unicorn, right? No one suffers and struggles in the way they are. No one has the hard childhood that they had. You know, I went to this group and they're a bunch of heroin addicts and all I do is just drink some alcohol. You know, I'm definitely not that bad. Or all these guys are, you know, I don't even know what you're talking about, this whole narcissism thing. Like they're just a bunch of annoying people who think they know everything. So the hardest thing to get them to do is to go into group, but the most significant impact that would exist in their recovery plan would be to have them go into group. I will add, by the way, that every addict who shows up at my treatment centers always appears to be a narcissist. So keep that in mind. And usually after group work, after, you know, working 12 steps, after kind of coming to terms with their trauma and their shame and their struggles in life and learning how to authentically, vulnerably engage with other people, the narcissistic type traits fade away. What happens in group work? Let's talk about that for a second, or just what you're trying to go for here in all forms of treatment. You're trying to delicately help them understand that, yes, to engage with other humans is very scary, but it is a necessary requirement for our body and soul. We are neurobiologically wired to want to connect with other humans. When done in a healthy, consistent, predictable, safe way, it can fill our souls. And if we are filling our souls in a healthy way, then we are not instead trying to fill it in the unhealthy ways of abusing substances, sexually acting out, seeking validation in inappropriate ways, pushing through people's boundaries, isolating, threatening people, acting more powerful than everybody. So we have to replace the behaviors. And that is the goal of whether it's done in therapy or group work. That's what we're trying to do. What we're trying to instill in treatment is a sense of remorse and accountability. So they've turned the spigot off from underneath their heads, right? Where everything's thoughts here and feelings happen down here. This is where sadness happens, hurt, regret, fear, anxiety. It all happens down here. And they've turned the spigot off. And we're slowly trying to open that up again and have them connect with sadness. So what happens when you see your wife cry when she finds out that you relapsed? And you're really trying to see, can they have feelings? Can we create a safe environment where they can relearn that it's okay to have feelings? Like we'll survive that. And with that, you hope comes remorse, right? We have mirror neurons. I'm supposed to have reflective responses when I see you in struggle. I'm supposed to, you know, when I see someone crying, when I see someone in hurt and pain, or also conversely, joyful and laughing and having a great time, I have mirror neurons in me that are supposed to kind of be absorbing and processing and reflecting and having physical experiences of my own based on my engagement with you. That if that spigot's been turned off, we kind of need to slowly turn that back on in addicts and in narcissists. So what do I look for in treatment? What are we moving towards? Remorse and accountability. Can they allow the pain of maybe what they've done to another person and the pain that's been caused by their choices and behaviors? Can I let that absorb into my body and let the pain of it help me reassess my choices and my ways of life? Two other big words that are huge in the 12-step world. Is there a level of humbleness and surrender? Step one is saying, I am powerless to this, right? So opposite of narcissism, where I'm all powerful, there's a reason why we're saying we start with the big word of powerless. It's saying, I have to surrender myself to the fact that my best thinking got me here. If I keep leaning back on my best thinking, I'm going to continue to have all these same problems. And I need to surrender to the fact that I need to invite other people, a sponsor, a higher power, a spiritual practice, a fellowship group who have also suffered and struggled in a similar way and can help me move through my unhealthy coping skills, my not so great default setting as a human, and into connection, better choices, better framework, etc. I also look for admitting that you don't know everything. That's the humbleness and surrender. Accepting influence. That's also humbleness and surrender. In the steps 4 through 7 and 12 steps is about accepting accountability, owning how maybe you've been victimized in childhood or other circumstances, but then you've also exploited others. You've lied, you've cheated, you've manipulated, you've harmed other people, and coming to terms with the entire package, the whole good light, bad, like good light, bad, dark, all the above. I look for someone who is willing to engage with a recovery group and community where they will be honest with them. It's not just going through the motions and just showing up and judging all of them and saying how bad they are, how wrong they are. And be willing to have hard conversations with them, accept their influence, go to a sponsor, do what they say, listen to experts, listen to feedback, try new things. They always say relapse is like part of the recovery plan. Okay, but there's consequences to relapse. If I relapse, that means I need to get a higher level of care. Maybe I need to do more than just one group a week or one therapy session a week. Maybe I need to go to treatment. Maybe I need to go to an intensive outpatient program. That is me owning that my best thinking got me here and that I can accept influence from other people because I don't got this. I don't got this. They need their community to stay sober, humbled, accountable, and develop empathy and compassion. It is required. I never see anyone make it through without the group work. And then another part of the recovery process is being of service to other people. And they are trying to develop, they had such a fragile ego because they had no sense of self. Really deep down, that's the biggest paradox of narcissism. I act like I'm the greatest thing in the world. I'm so grandiose because deep, deep down inside, I feel worthless. And I'm so, so scared that someone's going to see that and know that. And that's often the story for addicts as well. So they need to do things like engage in services to others, helping others, community service, because it is really hard to hate yourself when you are giving of your time, giving to others, showing generosity to others. So that's why it's part of the treatment program. All right, so let's close out with signs that are warning signs that your addict or narcissist might not be doing very well. So even if maybe the addictive behavior, the drinking, the acting out has ended, so the behavior's ended, there's signs or concerns if they are still not doing any kind of group work, unwilling to like meet or engage other people who suffer and struggle in the same way. You still hear that really impaired, distorted framework for life that just kind of, again, makes your face go, what? Really? That's how you see things? So pay attention to those muscles in your face. If you feel them, it's a sign like things are no bueno. They're still not capable of sitting there with hard conversations, empathy. They're struggling to identify the not so great behaviors that they've done. Not so much, there's not accountability, there's still acts of minimizing and rationalizing. for those of you who are sitting listening to all this saying, well, okay, how long do I wait and see? How long do I give this? I can't give you an exact date, but I'd like to see progress in all these things. You know, if they're doing group, it needs to be really diving deep into 6 months of group. But I'll let you know the way that they avoid it is they'll try one group and they'll have all the reasons in the world why that group doesn't work. And then they'll waste time finding a new group. And then they'll tell you all the reasons why that one doesn't work. He's a flake. This guy doesn't do this, or there's all these problems with it. And then they'll go, and then all of a sudden a year of your life has gone by and there's been no recovery or work. It's okay. You know, Scott always says this and he says this in our Life Anonymous book, if they start doing their treatment and recovery for consequence avoidance, that's okay. We can start with that. If it's like you're going to divorce them if they don't go to treatment, they're going to go to jail if they don't go to treatment, we can start with that. Let's start with that and see if we can start developing a sense of humbleness, surrender, remorse, accountability. All these treatment centers are well versed in helping people with that. So I think that is about it. I'm just going to let you know the final thoughts are some people will say that narcissists and addicts are unchangeable. Some say that they're just not capable of developing empathy, intimacy, honesty. I obviously wouldn't do what I do if I didn't have a core belief that people are capable of changing. The brain wires and rewires and changes wiring all the time. There's things that happen in life if we're under enough levels of discomfort and have enough consequences, we are capable of changing. I never know what that formula is or how long it's going to take an individual, but I believe everyone's capable of change. And that's it.
So I'm going to share, there's a phenomenal presentation, Kristin. So thankful for all the SI offers to the betrayed, the addict, and the couple. So thank you for sharing that. And like, there's so much, like I was thinking when you were talking about the fragile ego, the egomaniac with an inferiority complex comes to mind. The visual of, the great and wonderful Oz, and then you pull back the curtain and see what there really is. So all of that facade, no addict changes until the pain of change is less than the pain of staying the same. So as long as we can navigate this and like we are resistant because this, whatever we're doing is working for us on some level, and we're not willing to look at the consequences. I love what you're saying about the group, and my experience is the same. It's like, when people go and like, oh, I'm different, I'm the unicorn, I'm terminally unique, I'm like, I haven't done all of that stuff, and oh, you just can't believe it. Well, they're missing the point. I shared with somebody earlier today. I was traveling and I went to a meeting. I did not know one soul there, and I knew everyone because I connect, because we're addicts.
Okay.
Like I don't have to know them.
So true.
Yeah, I don't
That's
need
humbleness and surrender, right? Like,
yeah.
You spot it because you got it. Like, I see it.
And I'm incredibly grateful. I was sitting there in tears. I don't know any of these people, but they're sharing their stories, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they made it. They made it to recovery. Yay, So it's just different. And you were talking about the crazy making. And when it's great, and that's the hook for partners, I think, too, is like, we're so great together, except for this, and so the addict is able to keep going, like, I'm going to do enough of the great so that you keep hanging on. And it's crazy making for partners. I have shared, so Kristin did a webinar in May, and I have shared it often, of the should I stay or should I go, and it's just an opportunity for you to journal about the like the questions. Do I even like this person? Like, is there enough here that I want to stay? And I think it's great for both partners to participate in that. Separately, following up right after this, is a drop-in group for betrayed partners, the Moving On Alone. And that is for people who have chosen to leave, have been left, or kind of have a foot and a half out the door, and are going like, I just don't know that I want to work on the relationship. So, again, no judgment on that. It's just another opportunity. So we've got a couple of questions and we're running out of time. We have a hard stop because there's another group. So I'm going to ask the questions, and if we get back, I've got more I wanted to ask you too. So, betrayed partner on this journey for 3 years. Our betrayed partner is seeking their independence and power back at risk of becoming unhealthy narcissistic or developing narcissistic personality disorder. My mother has many unhealed trauma from a lifetime, and she turned into a narcissist. That's an interesting question.
It is. And, it's fair. And I will say, I think when people heal, they'll swing to the full spectrum. Like I always joke when I was learning boundaries,
Yeah.
I realized I lost myself and I had no opinions and I had no idea what I wanted. And then the consequences, I swung over and I was like, I decide where I eat. I decide at what time. And then I became this really inflexible person. So what I would tell you is just that question is telling me that you're not moving that way because there's a sense of self-awareness and a desire to let the pain and discomfort change you and make sure that you don't make those same mistakes. And the other thing I'll say is group work. Like it just hanging out with other people and talking it out with other people, seeing their reaction to you, hearing and feeling your reaction to other people and what they're saying. If you are plugged into the pain and discomfort and kind of willing to let it move you and affect you, that is what stops you from being a narcissist. That's what stops you from this unwillingness to do hard things, talk about hard things, see hard things about yourself, and process hard truths about yourself, have hard conversations with other people, and garner strength and courage from that process. So that's what I suggest.
Yeah, and I'm with Kristin. You're asking the questions. You're not just going like, I'm above all people, So yeah, but yeah, it's all of this stuff is a great cover for hurt. I don't want to feel hurt. I would rather, be in the thinking and above all of this. So glad you're here. Great question. Okay. I am the betrayed partner. My jaw is on the floor. As I listened to you, I took the online self-diagnosis test for narcissism on psychcentral.com. How do I strengthen my ego if I have grown up so far with a fragile ego and routinely use narcissistic behaviors to soothe, avoid reality? Are there check-ins I can use to be better aware? It feels like such a big part of my personality. Can you reframe your solutions section to a bit of for a narcissist going through betrayal trauma? Another great question.
Well, don't forget that narcissism and addiction spawn are created from so much pain, realizing that you can't trust other people. But this happened like in their childhood developmental stage. You now are going through that in your adult stage. If you've been hit by betrayal trauma, you are in this very painful phase where you're just like, oh my God, the people I've trusted and exposed myself to the most and made myself most vulnerable to have harmed me the most. So it is not far-fetching to realize you've taken the fear and vulnerability of that traumatic experience and absorbed narcissistic traits of like, never mind, I'm not going to feel anymore. Never mind, I'm not going to worry about what other people want. I'm just going to worry about myself and take care of myself and isolate and run from other people. So I want to validate that when someone's in a state of crisis, in a difficult season of their life, they can certainly take on unhealthy traits, right? We can abuse a little too much alcohol. We can maybe seek out validation in not so great ways, take on narcissistic traits. What will stop it is the continued awareness and discussion about why you're doing it, how it's filling this gap in your soul, and working towards finding healthier ways to fill it instead.
Well, and I was thinking while you're talking about that too, is like if the whole world feels like I can't trust this, is there a baby step that you could take where you go, well, maybe this group, maybe it's a book club or something completely,
Right.
Benign, where it's
Benign,
like,
right.
go, like I have my friends at the gym, like, I couldn't find them if they weren't at the gym, because we just go to the gym together. But like when I see them, I love seeing them and we chat and all of that kind of stuff. It's a completely safe
A
place to have.
pickleball group, a tennis
Yes, exactly.
group.
Yeah.
Or even I find too, like even just the most benign version is not a two-way engagement, but just listening to like podcasts on the topic. Because I find
That's
it
what
personally found it healing to be like, wow, people are emotionally intelligent. Wow, they do like you can have hard conversations because listen to them on this podcast having hard conversations. Like I want to go to there. And so I find that even like to be a safe healing process.
And I'm the only caution, and we'll get to the last question, but is like those little quick self-assessments. Like we have one on our homepage about, addiction. It is a quick little self-screener. Like if you have narcissistic personality disorder, if somebody comes to our residential treatment program, our therapists do not diagnose that. We have someone who is actually trained to address that and addiction, who can unpack what is really going on. So the quick little self-screeners are good, and you might have some traits and all of that kind of stuff. But again, here you are asking the question, so you are interested in doing something different. Okay, last question. My SAPA husband says he can't connect with his group members because they all get to do stuff like freely use the internet and watch TV media. That's a lie and excuse. We don't have disclosure, and I have wasted the past year since D-Day and 17 years before that waiting on him to grow up and show up. Yeah, that's called an excuse.
I think you're answering your own question.
Yes.
I think the goal is to eventually get to letting people freely move about the cabin, right? We don't want babysitting and constant like structure and accountability, but someone has to show that everything about who they are and their tendencies and their default setting is now different, and they're going to lean into the group to make better choices. Plus, by the way, he might be playing on the fact that you don't know all their stories, and he's just telling you the version of the story that he wants you to hear.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm like, there's so many ways to connect in other ways, and like drop-in groups, even online 12-step meetings have separate rooms for safe chat, like the before the meeting and after the meeting, type of thing. So that's called a massive excuse. It's all good. Okay. Thank you, Kristin. We're out of time. She'll be back in 2 weeks for another special edition Thursday version. So check that out. More stuff on our calendar. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward